Have you ever looked up at the night sky full of twinkling stars and wondered where it all came from? It is one of the biggest and oldest questions humans have ever asked. Where do we come from? This question is not just about our families or our hometowns. It is about everything. It is about the stars, the planets, the trees, the animals, and us. It connects every single person on Earth because we all share this deep curiosity. We all want to know the story of our beginnings, stretching back through time, long before any person was alive to see it happen. Science gives us a way to explore this amazing story. This journey for answers is like being a detective, but for the entire universe. Scientists look for clues that were left behind billions of years ago. These clues are not fingerprints or lost objects. They are things like the light from distant galaxies, the rocks deep inside our planet, and the very code of life hidden within our bodies. By studying these clues, we can piece together an incredible timeline. This timeline takes us from the very first moment of the universe to the present day, right here, right now, as you read these words. It is a story so big it is almost hard to imagine, but it is our story. Thinking about our origins is not just for scientists in labs. It is for everyone. Understanding where we come from helps us understand our place in the universe. It shows us how we are connected to everything around us, from the smallest insect to the most distant star. It can make us feel both very small and very special at the same time. We are a tiny part of a massive cosmos, but we are also a part of it that can think, wonder, and ask these profound questions. This ability to be curious is one of the most wonderful things about being human, and it drives us to keep exploring. In this essay, we will take a journey through time, following the path that science has uncovered for us. We will start at the very beginning of the universe. We will see how stars were born and how they created the ingredients for life. We will watch our own planet Earth form from cosmic dust. We will talk about how life began and how it changed over billions of years to become the rich and diverse world we know today. It is a grand adventure, and it is the story of how you came to be. So let's get ready to explore the ultimate origin story. Our story starts a very, very long time ago, about 13.8 billion years ago to be exact. At that moment, everything we know, all of space, all of time, all matter and all energy, was squeezed into a point that was smaller than you can imagine. It was incredibly hot and incredibly dense. Then, in a fraction of a second, it suddenly expanded. This event is what scientists call the Big Bang. It was not an explosion like a firework in the sky. It was the beginning of the universe itself. It was the moment that space began to stretch and grow, and it has been growing ever since. In the first few minutes after the Big Bang, the universe was like a thick, hot soup. It was so hot that not even atoms could form. It was just a swirling mix of tiny particles and energy. As the universe continued to expand, it started to cool down. This cooling allowed the very first building blocks of matter to come together. The simplest and lightest elements were created in these first few moments. These were mostly hydrogen and helium. Almost all the hydrogen and helium that exists in the universe today was made in just the first few minutes of its life. For about 380,000 years, the universe was still a foggy place. It was filled with a dense plasma of particles and light could not travel very far before bumping into something. But as the universe kept expanding and cooling, a very important event happened. The particles finally cooled down enough to join together and form the first stable atoms of hydrogen and helium. When this happened, the light that was trapped in the fog was suddenly set free. The universe became transparent for the first time. That ancient light is still traveling through space today, and we can detect it as the cosmic microwave background. This leftover glow from the early universe is one of the most important pieces of evidence we have for the Big Bang. It is like an echo of the universe's birth. When we look at this light with special telescopes, we see that it is almost perfectly uniform everywhere. However, it has tiny, tiny temperature differences. These tiny spots, which were slightly hotter or cooler, were the seeds of everything that would come later. They were the places where matter would slowly begin to gather, pulled together by gravity, to eventually form stars, galaxies, and everything else we see in the cosmos today. After the universe became transparent, it entered a period called the Cosmic Dark Ages. For millions of years, there were no stars to light up the vast expanding space. There were only giant invisible clouds of hydrogen and helium gas drifting through the darkness. But gravity was patiently at work. In those areas that were just a tiny bit denser, gravity started to pull more and more gas together. Over millions of years, these clouds of gas became bigger and denser. As they grew, the pressure and temperature at their centers started to rise to incredible levels. Eventually, in the hearts of these massive collapsing clouds, it became so hot and so dense that something amazing happened. The hydrogen atoms started to smash into each other and fuse together to create helium. This process, called nuclear fusion, releases a tremendous amount of energy in the form of light and heat. This was the moment the first stars were born, ending the cosmic dark ages and lighting up the universe for the first time. These first stars were probably huge, much bigger and brighter than our own sun. They were giants that burned through their fuel very quickly. These first stars were like cosmic kitchens. Inside their super hot cores, they did something incredible. Through nuclear fusion, they began to cook up heavier elements. They fused helium into carbon, carbon into oxygen, and so on. For the first time, the universe had elements other than just hydrogen and helium. These new elements like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and iron are absolutely essential for life as we know it. Without them, there would be no planets like Earth, no water, no plants, and no people. These giant stars were creating the very stuff we are made of. Because these first stars were so massive, they did not live for very long. After only a few million years, they ran out of fuel and died in spectacular explosions called supernovae. These explosions were so powerful that they blasted all those new, heavier elements out into space. The stardust, full of carbon, oxygen, and iron, scattered across the cosmos. This material then mixed with the hydrogen and helium gas in space, enriching it. The next generation of stars would form from these enriched clouds. This cycle of stars being born, creating new elements, and dying has been happening for billions of years. After the first giant stars exploded, the universe was never the same. The space between the stars was now seeded with a rich collection of new elements. This cosmic dust and gas formed vast, beautiful clouds called nebulae. These nebulae became the birthplaces for the next generations of stars. Once again, gravity went to work, pulling clumps of this enriched gas and dust together. As these clumps grew, they started to spin, flattening out into huge, rotating disks. At the center of each disk, a new star began to form, just as the first stars had. But this time, something new happened in the disk surrounding the star. Our own sun is one of these later generation stars. It was born about 4.6 billion years ago, from a cloud of gas and dust that contained the recycled ashes of countless stars that had lived and died before it. In the swirling disk of material that surrounded our young sun, which we call a protoplanetary disk, tiny grains of dust and ice began to stick together. It was like a cosmic game of snowball. Little bits clumped together to make bigger bits. These bigger bits collided and merged to form even bigger chunks, called planetesimals. It was a chaotic and messy process. Over tens of millions of years, these planetesimals continued to crash into each other, growing larger and larger through a process called accretion. Their own gravity became strong enough to pull in more and more material from the disk around them. This is how the planets of our solar system were born. In the inner, hotter part of the disk, rocky planets like Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars formed. These worlds were made of heavier elements like iron, silicon, and oxygen. They were too close to the sun for lighter gases to stick around. In the outer, colder parts of the solar system, the story was different. It was cold enough for ice to form along with rock and metal. This allowed giant planets like Jupiter and Saturn to grow to enormous sizes. They became so massive that their powerful gravity could capture huge amounts of the lightest gases, hydrogen and helium, which were the most abundant materials in the disk. This is why they are known as gas giants. And so, from a spinning cloud of stardust, our entire solar system, with its sun, rocky planets, gas giants, moons, and asteroids, was created. Among all the planets that formed around our sun, one was in a very special place. This planet was Earth. It formed in a region that scientists now call the habitable zone, or sometimes the Goldilocks zone. This means it was not too hot and not too cold. It was just right. It was far enough from the sun that liquid water would not just boil away into space, but it was also close enough to the sun that the water would not be permanently frozen into solid ice. This location was incredibly important because, as far as we know, liquid water is absolutely essential for life to begin and survive. The early Earth was, honestly, a wild and violent place. It was a molten ball of rock, constantly bombarded by asteroids and comets left over from the formation of the solar system. One of the most dramatic events in Earth's early history was a gigantic collision. Scientists believe that a Mars-sized object smashed into the young Earth. This incredible impact blasted a huge amount of molten rock into orbit around our planet. Over time, gravity pulled this debris together, and it formed our moon. This event not only gave us our beautiful moon, but it also tilted Earth on its axis, which gives us our seasons. As the bombardment from space slowed down, Earth began to cool. A solid crust formed on its surface. Volcanoes erupted all over the planet, releasing gases from inside the Earth. These gases, including water vapor, carbon dioxide and nitrogen, created the planet's first atmosphere. As the planet cooled further, the water vapor in the atmosphere condensed and fell as rain. It rained for millions and millions of years, filling the low-lying basins and forming the first oceans. These early oceans were the cradle where life would eventually appear. The Earth we know today is the result of billions of years of change. The continents have drifted and collided. Mountains have risen and eroded away. The climate has shifted between warm periods and ice ages. All of these geological processes have worked to create a dynamic and stable planet. Our world has a magnetic field that protects us from harmful solar radiation. It has an atmosphere with the right mix of gases for us to breathe. And it has vast oceans of liquid water. All of these features came together to make Earth a perfect home for life. Once Earth had cooled down enough to have liquid water and a stable surface, the stage was set for the next amazing chapter in our story. Somewhere on our young planet, possibly in the warm, shallow waters of the oceans, or perhaps near deep-sea volcanic vents, something extraordinary happened. Non-living chemical ingredients came together to form the very first life. This incredible jump from non-life to life is called abiogenesis. It is honestly one of the most profound and exciting parts of our origin story, but it is also one of the biggest mysteries that science is still trying to solve completely. Scientists have found evidence of early life in very old rocks. Some of the oldest fossils are of tiny, simple, single-celled organisms similar to bacteria today. These fossils are found in rocks that are about 3.8 billion years old. That means life appeared on Earth relatively quickly after the planet became habitable. But how did it start? Scientists think that the early oceans were like a primordial soup, full of simple chemical compounds. Energy from lightning, volcanic heat, or ultraviolet light from the sun could have caused these simple chemicals to form more complex molecules, like amino acids and nucleotides, the building blocks of life. One of the key questions is what came first. Did a simple cell structure form first, creating a protective bubble for chemical reactions to happen inside? Or did a molecule that could make copies of itself, like RNA or DNA, appear first? Or perhaps it was a simple metabolic cycle, a set of chemical reactions that could sustain itself. Scientists are exploring all these ideas in laboratories. They are trying to recreate the conditions of early Earth to see if they can get these life-starting reactions to happen. While they have made amazing progress in creating the building blocks of life, no one has yet created life from scratch in a test tube. Because we do not have a definitive answer, some scientists have also considered other possibilities. One idea is called panspermia. This is the idea that life might not have started on Earth at all. Instead, the basic building blocks of life, or even simple microbes themselves, could have arrived here from space. They might have traveled on asteroids or comets that crashed into our planet billions of years ago. This does not solve the mystery of how life started in the first place, but it does move the location. For now, the exact spark that ignited life remains a fascinating puzzle that future scientists will continue to explore. Once life got started on Earth, it began a very long and incredible journey. For billions of years, life remained very simple. The only living things were tiny, single-celled organisms floating in the oceans. But even though they were small, they were not idle. They were slowly but surely changing the entire planet. One group of these early bacteria, called cyanobacteria, developed a new way to get energy. They used sunlight to make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. A major byproduct of this process was oxygen, which was released into the oceans and the atmosphere. This event, known as the Great Oxidation Event, was a huge turning point for life on Earth. At first, oxygen was poisonous to most other forms of life. But over time, Some organisms evolved new ways to not only survive in an oxygen-rich world, but to actually use oxygen to get more energy. This paved the way for more complex life to develop. Eventually, some single cells began to work together, forming colonies. From these colonies, the first multicellular organisms evolved. This meant life was no longer just single cells, it was now made of many cells working together, like plants and animals. This amazing variety of life that we see today is the result of evolution. Evolution does not happen to one animal or plant during its lifetime. It happens to populations over many generations. It works through a combination of two main ideas: random genetic changes and natural selection. The instructions for building a living thing are stored in its DNA. Sometimes, small random changes or mutations happen in this DNA. Most of these changes do not do anything important, but occasionally, a change might give an organism a small advantage, helping it survive better or have more offspring in its environment. This is where natural selection comes in. Organisms with traits that are well suited to their environment are more likely to survive and pass those traits on to their children. Over millions of years, these small, helpful changes can add up, leading to the development of entirely new species. This process explains how simple, single-celled organisms could slowly branch out and give rise to all the life we see today. It is like a giant family tree called the Tree of Life. Every plant, animal, fungus, and bacterium on Earth is a twig on this incredible ancient tree. When we look at the vast Tree of Life, we find our own species, Homo sapiens, on one of its branches. The theory of evolution tells us that humans share a common ancestor with all other life on Earth. Our closest living relatives in the animal kingdom are the great apes, like chimpanzees and bonobos. By studying DNA, scientists have found that we share about 98% of our genetic code with them. This does not mean humans evolved from modern chimpanzees. Rather, it means that humans and chimpanzees both evolved from a common ancestor that lived millions of years ago. The story of human evolution is written in the fossil record. By digging up and studying the bones of our ancient relatives, called hominids, paleontologists can piece together our family history. This fossil record shows a long line of ancestors stretching back millions of years. We see species like Homo erectus, who learned to control fire and migrated out of Africa, and the Neanderthals, who were our close cousins and lived in Europe and Asia. Each fossil discovery adds a new piece to the puzzle, showing us how our bodies and brains changed over time, leading eventually to modern humans. All life on Earth is fundamentally connected. This connection is not just a poetic idea, it is a scientific fact written in our DNA. The very same genetic code that tells a flower how to grow its petals is used in your body to build your cells. The elements that make up your body, the carbon, the oxygen, the nitrogen, were forged inside stars that exploded billions of years ago. We are literally made of stardust. The water in our bodies is the same water that has been cycling through Earth's oceans and clouds for billions of years. We are deeply and truly part of the planet and the cosmos. This understanding changes how we see the world. It shows us that we are part of a grand interconnected web of life. Every species has its place in this web, and the health of the whole system depends on its parts. When we look at a forest, a coral reef, or even a simple bird in a tree, we are looking at our distant cousins. We are all part of the same 4-billion-year-old story of life on this planet. This shared heritage is a powerful reminder of our responsibility to protect the planet and the amazing diversity of life that we share it with. Science has given us an incredible story about where we come from. We have journeyed from the Big Bang to the formation of stars, from the birth of Earth to the evolution of all life. It is a story based on evidence, observation, and careful detective work. However, the story is not finished. In fact, one of the most exciting things about science is that there are still huge mysteries left to solve. For every answer we find, we often discover new and even more interesting questions. The quest for knowledge is a journey that never truly ends. Some of the biggest remaining questions take us back to the very beginning. What happened before the Big Bang? Was there anything? Science does not have an answer for that yet. We also do not know what most of the universe is made of. The stars, planets, and galaxies we can see only make up about 5% of the cosmos. The rest is made of mysterious substances called dark matter and dark energy. Scientists know they are there because of their gravitational effects, but we do not know what they are. Uncovering their nature is one of the biggest challenges in physics today. Closer to home, the origin of life itself remains a profound puzzle. As we discussed, scientists have great ideas about how life might have started from non-living chemistry, but the exact steps are still unknown. We have not yet been able to create life in a lab, so the spark that began it all remains a mystery. Furthermore, we do not fully understand how human consciousness, our ability to think, feel, and be self-aware, arose from the complex network of neurons in our brains. It is one of the deepest questions about what it means to be human. These unanswered questions are not a failure of science. They are the frontier of human knowledge, and they are what make science so exciting. They are the mountains that the next generation of explorers, scientists, and thinkers will get to climb. Every time a new telescope like the James Webb Space Telescope peers deeper into space, or a new fossil is dug out of the ground, we add another sentence to our great origin story. Our curiosity is the engine of discovery, and as we continue to ask where do we come from, we continue our amazing journey to understand our place in the universe.